and they're incredibly plenty of students, but also people from the industry, companies like SAP and so on. But many young, struggling, searching for a place in life, and plenty of distractions around them. And so what I realized is I'm also part of this bubble of being confronted with many distractions and diving into way too many topics at once instead of fast, basically pursuing one interest and seeing, okay, does it work or is it a failure? And if you kind of try everything at once, in the end, you're being inspired by plenty of topics, but in the end, you never find out, do I succeed or not? Or you rather might take the easy route and jump to the next topic before you even realize, could I have been successful? So since I kind of had that realization, I think I'm trying to reduce the number of distractions in my life and rather focus on so I have one major project I'm currently heavily diving into, which is all about kind of solving the problem of loneliness for people in society. Because what I learned is I work best with human connections and making those connections for others. And so my social agenda for this is, I think, actually I didn't expect Adam to be in here. I think both you and Adam, I've from the distance already experienced you both being extremely skilled in making meaningful connections between others. And so maybe even more valuable than the people we meet while having this tour is, I think it's already a gift observing people like the two of you, asking questions, guiding discussions, and learning from people with your experience.
Nice. Coming back to the like this ocean of ideas that you're in, and always reminds me to myself, where I felt like, okay, I know what you're saying, I know how you're feeling. There's so many things, and then there's another thing that could be done or should be done, and there's so many, and then you know that there are entrepreneurs who build, and then there are entrepreneurs who keep, and I feel like this is the journey of entrepreneurs who build rather than entrepreneurs who keep. And then you just realize, okay, I can only do so many things, but you keep on building but never keeping. You always get attracted when growing something. Once it's at the point where you feel like I can't contribute to radical growth and change anymore, you have to let go and let someone else continue. But what you can also do is kind of work with the fact that you live in an ocean of ideas and make an idea cafe where you invite people and just gift them with your ideas and where to go. We have Sini joining us already, which is very nice, which gives us a hard cut to that unconference part, to this open part. And I want to get back to detail later, also to have that fraction, that part of the conversation. But for now, please welcome Sini with us. I'm going to make you admin. I think it means I make you host.
Yeah, that's right. Making me host would be great.
So you're awesome. Host now because you have an experiment with us.
Well, I was hoping to have an experiment, but we can also just do show of hands and that good old technique. Well, let me start by introducing myself. So I'm sitting here in Oakland, California, which is about 20 minutes outside of San Francisco. I came to the Valley about 7 years ago after working for BMW on their electric cars until 2013. We brought out the i3 and the i8 in 2013, and then I came out here to do my MBA at UC Berkeley for 2 years, which was the most fun time in my life, and I would never do it again. And then after those years, I actually had a chance during the time at Berkeley to join McKinsey for a 3-month stint, which was one of the most amazing learning experiences I had. And I can only recommend anybody who has a chance to join McKinsey for at least a few months, because the amount of learning that happens during that period of time is just incredible. And then in 2015, I had a chance to join a startup out here called Lucid Motors that works on electric cars. So they're producing a super luxury electric vehicle, $100,000 plus. You can check it out on lucidmotors.com. I was leading their marketing for about 2 years, specifically the product marketing. And then in 2017, I had a chance to join
You were actually
Apple
about to launch, right? Lucid, didn't they announce in the fall
I
that
hope
they're
so.
about to launch?
I hope so. I hope
Pretty
so.
cool.
End of this year was the original plan. We'll see. We'll see how coronavirus works for or against that. But yeah, that was the original plan. Yeah, and then in 2017, where I felt we actually had a launch event in 2017 for Lucid Motors, where we were driving people around in our beta vehicles. There was even a autonomous driving section happening, where we were taking future customers on an autonomous ride in the South Bay. And that was very exciting because I was leading the program to get the autonomous driving done for that experience. So I was just very hopeful that nobody will get injured in that test. And then 2017, I had a chance to join Apple as a program manager, working specifically on new product introductions. So for the past 2.5 years or so, I was helping them especially bring new laptops to market. As you guys know, we had a lot of challenges with our laptops over the past 2 years or so, especially the keyboards got a lot of bad press. So we were working extensively on getting those updated. And I think with the newest versions that just came out, we did a pretty good job. So I left Apple a few months ago, and I'm working on my own project right now, which is I'm writing a book. The book is going to be called Lit, L-I-T, and it's on the topic of technology and fulfillment, meaning how technology is actually taking away from our own control over our lives, and how we can live a fulfilled life. And it's especially targeting a younger generation, so Gen Z, who is whose oldest members are about 20 years old at this point. So I really want to help young people who were raised in this age of technology to figure out the fulfillment and how to live a happy life really early on. And that comes from this pure thinking that Gen Z is the one who will decide what technology for all of us looks in the future. They're the first generation that completely lived from day one with smartphones in their hand. And I think they will definitely define what that means for us as well. All right. So what I want to talk to you guys today about, and this is the first time I'm talking about this. I never thought that I would be talking about privacy, but as I'm writing my book, privacy is becoming a bigger and bigger topic because I actually think it very much influences where technology is going to go from here. But with like every good Silicon Valley tour, I think we should also start with the tour of a building that I know super well, which is the newest Apple Park, the headquarters of Apple, which I lived in for 2 years. And I want to share my screen to make that happen and show you, let's see, here it is. All right, can you guys see my screen? Great. All right, let me show you this video and comment for a minute on it. I know you guys are not getting a chance to obviously see Apple Park in life, unfortunately. Coronavirus is not helping us, but I did a tour of Silicon Valley in 2015. So I stepped on this little tiny bus that took off in Oakland, and for about a whole day, honestly, like 8 hours, we were driving around in Silicon Valley, and they were showing us Facebook, they were showing us Apple, we drove to Google. And it was 2015 when I made the decision that I wanted to work at Apple at some point, because these people seemed so focused on their work and so interested in making the world a better place that I could even feel that energy just out from a tour bus. And so 2015, I made the decision. 2017, I made it happen. And then 2018, 2018, we moved into this building, which I'm going to show you now. All right, I hope you can see this. Oops. So this is the entrance to Apple Park. The buses come from down here typically. My office was actually right down here. My video is kind of slow, sorry for that. The Apple Park inhabits 12,000 Apple employees. And the biggest part is really the park that they built inside, which has its own stage. So this is for music performances, where basically 12,000 people watch one of the greatest artists perform. I think Lady Gaga was there recently. The Apple Park has only been created in 2018 in the middle of Cupertino, so there was a lot of deconstruction that needed to happen to make the space. What's also important is that the entire building is covered with solar panels, meaning during daytime it provides enough energy to cover all of Apple Park's needs. So in that sense, it's fully renewable. Let's see, I hope it gets back to the garden. Yeah, in the Apple Park, you have a bunch of different trees. Obviously, apple trees are a majority of the trees that are being grown there, but a lot of the food that is actually grown there also goes into the kitchen of Apple Park. So Apple employees actually eat a lot of the food that is being grown in the park itself. The thing that did strike me about Apple Park when I initially moved there was that because it's a round circle, we can all go everywhere. Some sections are obviously closed off for executives, which are typically in section 8, which is out here. But what struck me in the beginning was that there were doors between the sections. So this is, for example, a section ends right here and a new one starts right here. There are doors between those sections, meaning 12,000 employees are touching the same door. And when I first went through the building, I was shocked that 12,000 people would be constantly opening and closing the same doors, which when coronavirus broke out in February, Apple was the first tech company to close doors because they were all touching the same doors and sharing the germs basically. So as soon as one employee got sick in Apple Park, all of Apple Park would be sick. And for me, that was shocking even 2 years ago that was something they would build. So I'm sure they will change those doors and make them automatic in future. But for me, that was a really bad foresight in terms of how 12,000 people in one building share a virus. So that's as much as I wanted to talk to you guys about Apple and in terms of their building and giving you an actual physical tour of what that looks like. But what I want to go down to more now is really the topic of privacy. But maybe before I jump in there, just to check in with you if there are any questions on the building itself or how it was constructed or the amount of people living there or anything really related to the physical attributes of Apple. All right, great. So the first thing I wanted to start talking about is the Valley's reaction to the coronavirus. What was fascinating to me is that in February, way before countries really shut down their borders, I talked to my friends, it was first week of February, and most of them already moved to different places. So there was a huge foresight in the Valley that this thing would affect us way before California shut down businesses, way before the US reacted to it. And it's actually a great example to what Silicon Valley stands for, which is a foresight that something will happen, plus a bottom-up ability for people to immediately change based on that information. So my friends didn't even think for 24 hours. They booked Airbnbs outside of San Francisco, 2-3 hours, the day they heard of this virus. They moved there and they've been living there for the past 2 months. And that's what I think Silicon Valley really stands for, is this immediate reactiveness to change that they see in the external world. I haven't seen that type of attitude anywhere else in the world, and it obviously comes with its own downsides, but the upsides are that people are able to create things so quickly just because they immediately react to these stimuli. So what I want to talk to you about is, and maybe before I go in there, some disclaimers. First one is, I currently don't represent any company, so everything I say is really my opinion. It's not Apple saying, it's totally just Sini as a former Apple employee saying that. The other thing is,
actually a good thing, because when you still would be at Apple, you would have no way that you could share a lot of these things with us. So
yeah, that's true.
So
that is true.
Perfect timing.
Totally. Then the other thing is, I use terms like the Bay, the Valley, or San Francisco, and they're all the same thing for me. So every time I talk about one of those, I mean the 5 million people that live in this area of the world. And then when I talk about privacy going forward, like broadly speaking, privacy is the right to be let alone, or the freedom from interference. But when I talk about privacy, what I mean is actually information privacy, which is the right to control your own personal information and how it is being collected and used. And so today I have 5 topics I want to talk about. First is the coronavirus, and besides it being an attack on human life and the human way of living, I also think it's a potential attack on human privacy, specifically information privacy. I want to talk about, second, why Silicon Valley is so mixed on privacy. The third part is, how do business models influence whether privacy becomes a major part of decision making? What relation there is between tech algorithms and information privacy, and also, as the last topic, how I see the future of privacy and what I think others believe about it. So initially I was planning to have a little breakout where each of us are kind of talking about their fears in terms of privacy, but maybe instead of, oh, I see that there's some chats in here. Oh. Personal
I'm just keeping head of the chats, and if there's something popping up, I'll chime in and let you know, so you don't have to worry about the chat.
Totally. Okay, sounds great. Awesome. Yeah, so my initial thought was we would have some breakouts and talk a little bit about our fears around privacy, but I think the most important question that I have is, how important is this topic of privacy for you guys? So if you raise your hand with one finger, it means it's like the least important thing in your life. And if you hold up 5 fingers, then I'm going to assume it's something you think about every day. So maybe with a show of hands, how important is this topic to everybody? 3, 4, 3, 5. So between 3 and 5. So I think it's, and I'm making assumptions that a lot of you guys are from Europe. So I do think that this topic is actually a much bigger topic in Europe than it is in the Valley. At least from what I'm reading in the media, I think that in the past 2 years, different European governments have charged tech companies about $200 million in fees for abusing their privacy laws. Which I'm not actually surprised by, because Europe has always been more interested in protecting the personal life and also the information life that of the individual. In terms of coronavirus, so I think coronavirus is such an interesting virus, not only because of the obvious effects on health and businesses, but also on how it affects our willingness to share information. I don't know if you have read about Google, Apple, Facebook, and other tech companies being invited by Donald Trump about a month ago to join him and help him understand how he could use the data that they have to track every individual in the US to know where they're at, to know whether they have the coronavirus, and to share that information with other people. This is a major topic of discussion in a country where individualism is the highest value of all. We are thinking about introducing apps, and I think Google just brought out an app where they actually do share data of people who have the coronavirus for tracking purposes. Even in a country like this, this has been a topic on national level. Now, the opposite of countries like the US are China or Taiwan that have a much more communal sense. The way Taiwan deals with this topic right now is, as soon as you fly into Taiwan and land, the first thing you have to do upon landing is buy a Taiwanese SIM card, insert it in your phone, activate the SIM card, share the number of the SIM card with the government, and every day at a certain point in time, you will get a call from the government asking how you were doing, if any of the coronavirus related symptoms show up, to make sure that you're being tracked by the government. So the government has your SIM card information, they track your location as soon as you land in the country.
Sini, I have a short question. How did Google respond on Trump's invitation?
So the tech companies joined the invitation. I believe that it was a kickoff for them to be working on the tracking app that is currently being brought out and advertised. So I don't know if you've seen the recent CNET article that came out actually this morning. And it's saying that Apple and Google are working together on a major effort to stop the spread of COVID that uses signals from people's phone to warn them if they've been in contact with somebody who tested positive for the disease. So they are working on an app that will share your location data and information on whether you have it or don't have it with the wider world, so they can make sure that other people don't get infected, which is obviously a tremendous breach of privacy. It would have been unimaginable to share AIDS data in the same way that we're now sharing COVID infections. So this is definitely a new age in terms of privacy. The second thing that happens in Taiwan is you have to lift your luggage, stand like this, and they come with a disinfectant spray, and they literally spray down your entire body and your luggage upon entering the country. The third thing you have to do is you have to give them your home address, and your driver, who is a taxi company sponsored by the government, can only drive you to that address. You have to sign off a sheet of paper. They return the sheet of paper to the government. So there is an end-to-end tracking during these times of coronavirus in a country like Taiwan. They're doing really well. They're one of the best countries out there. A friend of mine flew from Silicon Valley to Taiwan end of January because he knew that that is his best chance to avoid getting the coronavirus himself. He's been learning Chinese for the past 3 months and has been super enjoying his time. So let's see. I think that the coronavirus is opening doors for governments and public companies to get hold of our data with the purpose of protecting us. And I think that's extremely dangerous. I want to talk a little bit about why Silicon Valley is so undecided on this topic and why we haven't done more on it. And as a starting point, I want to say this, as a country, we have one major issue, which is business and politics are basically the same thing. Meaning when businesses want something, politics tries to make that happen, especially in the time of Trump, where the incentive is to help businesses make as much profit as possible, rather than help the people, which is the original purpose of politics. With that in mind, the current politics that the country represents is actually a representation of the values of the major corporations within the country. Meaning for Apple, who has decided 2018 that it wants to become the golden standard for privacy, Apple hasn't been able to transfer that desire to the bigger market and the government. So to give you some background, in 2018, I remember we had some internal discussions around what Silicon Valley's point on privacy is, and especially what Apple's point on privacy is. And in 2018, Apple decided they wanted to be the golden standard for privacy in Silicon Valley. They wanted to be the consciousness of privacy. And I think one is specifically because we are all the end customer of Apple, but Apple is also in a traditional business model of selling hardware. So what I mean by that is Apple produces hardware in China, ships it across the globe, and sells it to the end consumer. It's the traditional B2C hardware production model. In that model, we are the end customers. We are the ones paying them, and our interest is their interest. So there is an alignment between their business model and us as the customer. Facebook, on the other hand, and I'm sure you noticed with the whole with what happened in 2016 and what was announced in 2018, that the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal, where Facebook harvested, or Cambridge Analytica harvested the personal data of millions of Facebook users without their consent and used it for political advertisement. That was enabled knowingly by Facebook. And obviously, Facebook has made efforts since. Facebook has had to report in front of Congress. But it also started a war between Facebook and Apple in terms of where they stand on privacy. Can you guys still hear me? It says my connection is unstable. Cool. It started a war between Facebook and Apple in terms of privacy. Apple has called out Facebook several times for having low privacy standards. One of Mark's reactions to that was actually to have his employees switch to Android phones, which most of them were extremely unhappy about. But this Facebook war is ongoing. What's interesting to me is at CES this year, Facebook and Apple were at a panel together. Representative argued that Facebook is now as good as Apple in terms of privacy. And that means two things. First, it means that Apple is now the de facto privacy standard. So they've achieved their goal of becoming the gold standard. But Facebook has also acknowledged to be like Apple. The problem when we look at the business model is Apple is in the traditional business model of selling hardware to people. Facebook has a very different business model. And I would argue that Facebook is actually not in the business model of us being the customer. What I mean by that is the actual customer that Facebook is serving is not you and me. The customer of Facebook is advertising companies. Advertising companies are the people who are paying Facebook, meaning their incentive system is to serve their customer well. What does it mean to serve advertising companies in the best way possible? It means to provide them with as much information about the customer, meaning us, about the end user, so that they can target the ads at the lowest cost and highest efficiency rates. We get from Facebook is a very, very specific description of who we are and what we're interested in. And I'm sure this experience has happened to all of you before, where you've been thinking about buying a product, you've been talking to your friends about buying a product, and within hours, you get an ad about that product on Facebook. I have no idea how for it to be just random. And I'm hearing it from my friends all the time who are like, oh, we're looking up something on Google Chrome, and obviously cookies are being saved. And the next moment, an ad comes up on Facebook where advertising companies are paying big dollars to target you specifically, who showed some interest, whether that's your discussion with a friend, your text with a friend, your email with a friend, or you looking up that product on Chrome. So Facebook is actually in the business model of selling our data. And once that is clear, it's also clear that we are the product, we're not the customer. And so we will be treated as the product. The way I see a product being treated is on a production line, we'll be optimizing the production line to decrease cost, to decrease churn, to improve output. And that's what's being done with us as a product. Meaning the goal of Facebook is for us to spend as many hours as possible on the platform and to input as much data from our lives as possible so they can clearly identify who we are. And how that works in the background in terms of algorithms is that Facebook tracks every single click, every single piece of information that we share, and it creates a kind of a voodoo doll representation of us in their system. And that voodoo doll is being fed by our information, and it inputs predictions on our behavior. And based on those predictions of our behavior, Facebook decides which posts it will show us in future. So I'm sure you guys know, but when you go on Facebook, posts are not ranked by recency, they're ranked by whatever this voodoo doll thinks is most important to us. And the part around importance is the thing where Facebook struggles to introduce privacy around, because our importance is determined by us sharing as much data as possible to Facebook, and Facebook sharing as much data as possible to advertisers. So they are actually in the business model of taking our privacy and selling it to somebody. That's unfortunately the reality that we're in. This is hardly different from websites like YouTube or Google. I know both of them have better marketing to like take them out of their responsibility. But at the same time, YouTube does the exact same thing as Facebook. It has a voodoo doll in the background, and based on what they think the voodoo doll likes and wants, they make recommendations to us. And I'm sure this is another shared experience that we all have, where you go on YouTube, you watch one video, you think to yourself, I'm just gonna watch another video. And 1.5 hours later, you're suddenly watching videos on ping pong, and you have no idea that you ever wanted to see ping pong before in your life. And I'm saying this because for the past month, I spent probably 5 hours watching ping pong videos, and I know everything about Timo Boll and other like famous ping pong stars just because I went down this crazy YouTube route. So I wanted to actually show you guys a video that friends of mine made about a year ago. It really showcases how Silicon Valley has changed, especially Gen Z, in their behaviors and engagement with technology. Let me share my screen real quick. Yes. Can you see my screen? Yeah. Good. So two of my friends, Asa Raskin and Tristan Harris, have a year ago opened a Center for Humane Technology in San Francisco. Both of them are extremely worried by the influence that tech has over our ability to focus and have attention on something, on our ability to have free will and make our own decisions, because they believe that this voodoo doll in the background is becoming so strong that it no longer gives recommendations, but actually guides our decision making in a very dangerous way. And they've recorded this video where they're interviewing some young adults or 15, 16-year-olds on how they're using technology and what it means to them.
I think it's a mixture of everything that's on social media that makes it so cool.
Stories or Bitmojis or gifts. Teens want to try out the new feature. They want to be on the cutting edge of the technology that's coming out.
So on Snapchat, there's like the Snap shows, there's Snapchat streaks.
In the morning, just send the streaks picture. And when I get home from school, send a streaks picture. And now it's like a habit to do when I get on my phone.
When I post things on social media, there's definitely a period where I'm checking who saw it.
How many views you get and what people are liking on my stories and what I should keep posting.
There is a lot of pressure to present a version of yourself that's close to perfect.
I almost never post a picture that hasn't been like touched up in any way on Instagram. I always check it. If it's not getting as many likes as my other pictures, I might delete it. I have binge watched, I think, multiple shows. I've watched about 10 to 12 episodes in a day.
The 15 seconds between each episode definitely makes you feel like you have this urgent choice you have to make.
Instead of having to wait for an episode to come out every week, Netflix as a whole makes it a lot easier to just consume so much media all at once in a row.
I'm still trying to decide, but it starts playing an episode. I'm like, oh, it won't hurt. You find yourself like 2 hours later and you're still watching it and you have homework to get done.
I watch a lot of YouTube, probably more than Netflix, and the suggested videos help me like subscribe to new people.
I will watch videos for like an hour and a half without even having a plan to do that.
There's just so much content that's just addicting.
Yeah, we are competing with sleep. I think that's the one thing that totally stuck with me after watching this video. I want to give you some more statistics on how influential our sharing of data, of our sharing of our own privacy, in combination with the algorithms that are being used. Depression rates among young women have increased 40% between 2013 and 2017. We now check our emails 74 times a day. And Gen Z, meaning the generation born between 97 and 2012, has an attention span of 8 seconds, which is half a second less than a goldfish. That's extremely scary. Millennials have an attention span of 12 seconds. That's already scary, but 8 seconds being worse than a goldfish is extremely scary. The young generations are getting hooked by technology like never before. I also think they're learning to deal with it like never before. Let me show you some other data that I found, which is, it's just deeply concerning in terms of where we stand as a society. Give me a second to find it. Sorry, I'm just searching for this information, which I found deeply fascinating. All right, I'm sharing my screen again. So Nielsen Research brings out a report every quarter. I think after about 1.5 years, those reports become accessible to everybody. So this is in the report from Q2 2018 based on the US population, how many minutes of usage we have by tablet, smartphone, computer, TV, connected devices, radio, and live time shifted TV. And what's interesting with this is not only that ages 50 plus are actually the biggest consumers of media, it's also the amount of time that we're talking about now. We're talking about close to 12 hours per day being connected and watching or using your the black mirrors that we have in our lives: smartphone, TV, tablet, computer. Those are extremely scary statistics for the average person, because this means some people use those devices even more than 12 hours and others obviously less, but as an average, this is an extremely scary average. What is logically happening is that live and time shifted TV is decreasing over time. So younger people don't watch that much TV. They watch more Netflix, meaning TV connected devices. They play more games, they watch more Netflix. They use their smartphones a lot, not as much actually as the 35 to 49-year-olds, but in terms of percentages, it is definitely the biggest category for younger people. So when I saw this data, I was also shocked, because how is it possible that the average person spends 12 hours on devices? That basically means we live our life in the digital world, and we live our life based on cookies and predictions of algorithms that are out there. Meaning our privacy is no longer a topic of self-protection. It's a topic of truly defining who we are, defining who we are in the digital world. So in the past, when we look at privacy and algorithms, in the past, advertising was, the way advertising worked in the past is more comparable to how it works on highways right now. We drive our cars and we pass a banner on the side that is a generic banner that is trying to reach as many people as possible. And we might look at it, we might not look at it, but it is our decision if we want to see it or not. That is what advertisement was like in the past. On the internet as well, we had a top banner, we had a side banner, and we had pop-ups that were all generic. We were able to click them away and continue on our journey. The argument that I'm trying to make right now is that advertising has become so specific that it actually reduces our ability of freedom to choose. We're no longer the ones choosing our content. It's the voodoo dolls that know our weaknesses better than we do, and is feeding into these weaknesses to decrease our ability to make our own choices. Why privacy is so important to me is not because I like to keep my photos to myself or I don't want other people to read my emails. Privacy to me is important because I would like to continue making my own decisions without companies telling me what I need to do. I think this is the mind shift that we need to make. And I think this is what Silicon Valley is starting to realize, that privacy is not about protecting our pictures, protecting our identity. Information privacy is about protecting our choice. And I fear that we're giving up choice by inputting more of our information in these systems. Without choice, these algorithms are degrading our human capabilities to reason. They're already degrading our attention span from one generation to the other, from 12 seconds to 8 seconds. What is the future of privacy? I personally, honestly, am not sure. What I'm reading from big companies like Gartner, who are doing, who are major marketing research companies, they're saying that privacy-first products are likely to become a trend, like organic, free trade, cruelty-free labels. So they think privacy-first is going to be a huge trend. We already see more than 60 jurisdictions around the world having implemented some postmodern privacy and data protection laws, which is great. And they also think that in the next 3 years, we will see 65% of the world's population having some being governed by some privacy laws, rather than today where we're at 10% of the population is governed by modern privacy regulations. So they have a very optimistic outlook into the future. I honestly don't have an opinion formed yet. As I'm writing my book, I'm sure I'm going to get closer to having a truthful opinion on where it leads. But as of right now, I see this to be a very dangerous trend that is not dangerous because we might lose some of our data, but it's dangerous because we're losing free choice. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. And I also wanted to give you 20 minutes or so to ask questions and engage in this conversation. I'm really curious to hear also the European perspective of it, because I'm here as the representative of Silicon Valley, having my own rather extreme views on it.
Sini, thank you so much for this. I'm not sure if I'm shocked or impressed or both. Surprised, definitely. I'm talking about attention span of 10 minutes as an average of an adult, and now you're telling me it's a few seconds. I'm shock frozen. I just want to look back to Apple's claim of being the golden standard. Did they meet that?
Internally or externally as a perception, or both?
No, as a company. The perception follows the perceived reality. But did they meet that standard? Are they the golden standard of privacy in Silicon Valley?
I would say the golden standard of privacy because of their business model. So for Apple, it was quite easy to become the golden standard because they don't actually are interested in our data. They don't, let's put it this way, they're interested in our data, like everybody's interested in our data, but they don't require our data to sell iPhones, right? And Facebook requires our information deeply to sell their product. So that's why you saw Apple developing something like a single sign-on. I don't know if any of you use the single sign-on by Apple rather than Google, Facebook, but the single sign-on with Apple works in a way where every time you sign on, you basically get a new email address and you manage these email addresses separately rather than just sharing your private email address like Google or Facebook do. So they are interested in closing down privacy. I think they can do it because of their business model. But if you think about Apple, they also have this like tremendous untapped potential, which other companies are building their entire business on, which is sharing our data with others. So I actually think Apple has, if they were ever to get into a crisis where hardware sales no longer work that well, they have access to a lot of data that would be a phenomenal, at least secondary business model for them. Right now, they don't need to tap into that. And I think it was easy for them to come out to say, we are the company that protects your data. We only care about selling you hardware and some services like Apple Music and some protection services. But our main thing is to still sell you hardware because we actually don't even need your data.
Also, it's a tricky thing. If you run a Google app on an Apple device, who's responsible for the privacy?
Yeah, totally. Great.
Okay. Dieter asked the question, what does it mean to lose choice?
Yeah. So imagine those algorithms that are running in the background. There's such a deep understanding of who we are and what our weaknesses is, meaning at the core, the question, how can we, like, imagine this scenario. You are at YouTube, you're an engineer and you go there for an interview and they ask you a typical interview question like, how would you improve profits at YouTube? What would you do as an engineer to improve profits? The logical first answer is, I can either improve profits by having people use our services more often or having advertisers pay more on YouTube. These are my two main levers. If I want people to spend more time on our platform, the thing that I actually need to do is I need to see where are they weak enough to say just another click, just another video. So this voodoo doll that exists in the background has to know our weaknesses so well that it can tap into them. I'm for example, a huge tennis fan, and they probably figured out that ping pong is close enough to tennis that I would click on ping pong videos. And sure I did. I clicked on ping pong videos and now I'm watching table tennis. So they kept me in the loop by understanding what are my weaknesses, where am I where am I capable enough to give in for just another video? And I don't want to watch those videos necessarily. This is not my conscious choice. It is my choice of weakness, my subconsciousness, that is allowing me to actually click on these videos. And that's what I mean with freedom of choice. They are degrading my own ability to choose because they're overemphasizing my weaknesses. One of the statistics that I want to give on this is in 2017, research came out on flat Earth video recommendations. So I don't know how much you guys know about flat Earth theory, but there are people who believe that the Earth is flat rather than round. In 2017, what they simply did is they went on Google, they typed in flat Earth, and they wanted to do a sentiment analysis by understanding how many of the links that show up are positive towards flat Earth. And it was about 20% of the links that Google showed you were positive. They did the same thing on YouTube. It was 35%. And then they clicked on one flat Earth video, and then they measured how many of the recommendations are positive towards flat Earth. And it was 90%. So now that you watch one flat Earth video, 90% of the other videos that are being recommended are positive on flat Earth, because we are much more likely to watch shocking videos, 4 to 7 times more likely actually, than to watch normal videos. And it is shocking to me that somebody believes that the Earth is flat. And so I'm more likely to watch that. What happened in 2018 is that...
Yeah, go ahead.
Go.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, what happened in 2018 is that Kyrie Irving, one of the most famous NBA players, outed himself as a flat Earth believer. And he later came on national television and he said that he's sorry for that, that he didn't mean it, but YouTube algorithms caught him and they drew him down this wormhole where he came out as a flat Earth believer. And the damage was done at this point because a lot of his fans now became flat Earth believers. It didn't matter that he changed his opinion later, because later people were saying, oh, the round earthers got him back. So they were sold on the flat Earth theory. He did the damage already, and this happened because of YouTube algorithms. That's what I mean with freedom of choice.
There is actually a fun anecdote on that. Elon Musk tweeted recently to the Flat Earth Society that he's a little disappointed that there is no Flat Mars Society, to which the Flat Earth Society responded instantly, every little child knows that the Mars is round. So.
That's funny. Oh my God.
I'd like to maybe just open this up to everyone. We have 10 minutes to go. We're 8 people here, so that gives open answers, open questions. Try to keep the answers short. I'm unmuting Ben for a beginner. I can't because you're the host now. You have to unmute people. So you decide.
Oh,
you can
okay.
walk through and just point
Got
the
it.
name, and you guys ask a question, or you can also say like no question, and then we move on to the next one. Sini, you have your controls.
Yeah, I unmuted Bent.
Yeah, I have no questions.
All right. What about Frederick?
Yeah, like it's a little bit scary, but I don't think I have a direct question. I would like to hear some more specific from others. I don't have any expertise, so
okay,
no
cool.
question.
Cool, that sounds great. Yeah, and this is all my opinions after doing my research for the book that I'm writing. So I wouldn't call myself an expert. There are people who know significantly more about this, but the trend is shocking to me, and I think it's worthwhile discussing. And then I have Adam here. Oh, sorry, MD?
Yes. So quick question. I remember reading the statement that Kai-Fu Lee made where he was talking about how Europe is actually not going to progress because of their privacy laws, and how they need to be more like China. And so the interesting thing from what you're speaking and what your experience is, what do you think, how do you kind of build, or is it possible to build a common social contract when it comes to privacy when there's fundamental disagreements and kind of ethical level of disagreements when it comes to this? What do you think about that?
I think you're asking the right questions. When I initially saw Europe's reaction to this, my immediate thought was as well that Europe is taking a step back and disconnecting to where technology is going. 2 years later, I'm actually not sure that's true. I really admire the protection that European governments are putting over their people. I haven't done analysis yet, but I would be super curious to analyze the US population, Gen Z, versus European population, Gen Z, and how these algorithms are actually affecting the different communities. I think because of our close alignment of politics and business, the decisions the US makes will always be in favor of business, even though it might mean some cuts into personal privacy. China is obviously also very extreme that way, where I think business and politics is very closely aligned. Plus, they can make all the calls necessary without having a democracy standing in their way. So I don't have a good answer for you because I'm not sure what the long-term consequences will be on the population. As I see it now, the US has a higher potential for creating consumers over creators. And let me describe that a little bit more precisely. Every time you go on YouTube and watch somebody else's content, you are the consumer. As you've seen in the statistic before, the average US consumer spends about 11.5 hours on different types of media consuming information. Those 11.5 hours are not used to be creators, meaning inputting information in the system, creating new values. Those are extracting value from what already exists. I'm fearful that as we become more hooked to the machinery, that our consumption goes up and our level of creation goes down. And ultimately, creation and innovation is what drives any economy. So I could see a reverse effect somewhere down the line where Europe, because the way it protects its people, is capable of creating more creators rather than consumers. But these are all hypothetical scenarios. I haven't done enough research to truly know or give a good answer.
Adam.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Adam, you're unmuted.
Hey.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, I'm kind of interested in everything, but I might play more of the devil's advocate to say, what if privacy is something that is not really a valuable thing to many people when the benefits of losing privacy for many are so high? Right. And when you're talking about should we have a coronavirus app or not, and is it dangerous? But if Tinder or Grindr could put a little gold star next to who has AIDS and who doesn't, then the first thing is it would give me a lot of more reassurance to use that app if I was a healthy person. And it would also be like, oh, I don't want to lose my gold star, so I better really check that I don't get these viruses. But we have it on eBay. You have your 5-star rating, or Uber. You don't want to be too much of a weirdo Uber driver, or you'll lose stars. And maybe if that gets me lots of sex or gets me lots of the products that I want, do I really, at that point, I don't care if the world knows that I don't have HIV. Now, if I do have HIV and I'm out of the system, that sucks too. And if I'm scared to say if I do or not, people will assume that I do. But I'm wondering if we put too high of a value on privacy.
Yeah. What's the value of privacy? That's the biggest question for me. And I think once it degrades the free will, I think it has value for each of us. I think the next book that I would love to write is on the creator versus the consumer class, because I think in future our society won't be structured any longer by income levels, but rather by whether we fall into consumer or creator class. The creator class I see as people who are making conscious efforts to down-regulate their tech consumption. So meditation, going to sleep without having used their phone for the past 2 hours. There are people who are very, very conscious about their privacy and how they use data in order to continue to have free will. But I fully agree with you that most people don't put enough value on their free will or privacy to actually make a change. I am very worried that a majority of the population might become consumers driven to make choices by the system, especially as AI gets further and further developed. So that's my biggest fear. Would I agree with you that a star rating on HMV would be helpful? Yeah, I fully agree. I would love to see that from others. I wouldn't love to share that myself, but that's how privacy works, unfortunately. As soon as I want to see something from others, I'm often willing to give up my own privacy for it. For sure. Yeah. Yeah, that was great. Anders, let's see. I'm trying to unmute you. Yeah. Okay, great.
But I mean, we also talked about privacy laws 5 or 6 years ago, where the topic was targeted marketing, as you talked about now as well. But don't we as consumers need to be more responsible and be more active in a way of protecting our own privacy and our own choice of using these smartphones and websites like Facebook?
In full agreement with you. I think that's what it will come down to. I don't think businesses have a large incentive to actually protect us. I think it's the radical responsibility that we will have to show in future for our own lives that will distinguish somebody who is a creator or a consumer. If you want to continue living a life of consciousness and creation, I think that is associated with you being more aware of how you use your own technologies and putting radical responsibility on yourself. I think that's where it's actually heading, because businesses have too little incentive to protect us.
We have 2 more minutes. One, can you please give me back the authority of being host? And then one more question. Yanis, Tito, or Scott, raise your hands if you have a question, then we can quickly, because we have a hard cut at 7. So Tito, go ahead. Now I'm unmuting you. Okay.
Thank you very much. Is privacy our modern currency? I mean, are we paying with our privacy to get things cheaper somehow?
100%. 100%. We are paying. We allow advertisers to pay for our privacy, but we could choose to pay instead of the advertisers.
Scott,
I truly believe
that was a short question, short answer. So we have one more for Scott. Let me unmute you.
Yeah, do you have any references like on how the brain itself works, like about conditioning or like behavioral science or anything like that?
Yeah. That's a great question. I started doing my research on that. I'm actually in the middle of writing this chapter, so I don't have references for you right now. But that is a topic I have to dive in deeper, because as of now, I'm just assuming that what my friends Tristan and Asa are saying about this in terms of habit building is true. The statistics also say that it's going that way, but I need to do some more research into behaviors and how habit building works in this case.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Sini, that was just great. We have Chris already logging in for our next session. Thank you so much for this very insightful hour. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to reconnect you all after today's session, so you can also reach out for Sini for individual follow-up conversation. And if you have things to share, please keep us in the loop about all your book. You definitely have at least one buyer here, but I guess there are more than one buyers here in the room. And once again, thank you so much for being here with us. Enjoy the rest of the day. All the best to Oakland.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you guys for listening. This was the first time I shared it, so it's all preliminary and it's all my little brain trying to make sense of the world.
Amazing. Thank you. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Bye.